podcast. We're here with Derek Tikkuri. He is the developer of the Gematrinator Calculator and the Gematrinator.com, correct?
Gematrinator, yep, you got it.
We want to explain what the study is specifically?
Sure. So gematria, by definition, is the practice or study of coding numbers into words and the mystical study that goes behind it. And it's based off of the belief that God created the world by speaking it into existence, by mixing the number and the letter. And this is how the Bible begins, is by God speaking the world into existence in 6 days. And to my understanding of why gematria is so significant is because this mystical connection between our reality and our spoken word is so strong that at some point the ancients discovered this and coded that knowledge accordingly into the Bible and other religious texts. So nowadays, in the present, when we talk about gematria and when we look at decoding events, we're observing these numerical alignments that seem relatively impossible if these events were completely random. And to me, this shows some level of coordination behind these events. And this is evidenced further by the agenda that the mainstream media derives as soon as these events occur, because this is all based on a problem reaction solution model. As far as why these events are coded by the numbers, that's one of the things I get asked the most often. And they're saying, you know, if these things are fake or carried out by some secret organization, why would they leave their stamp on it for us to discover? And again, I point to the fact that this is based in an understanding of what this reality really is, and this mechanical nature of it, this geometric nature of our universe. They have an understanding that, you know, the dates that we're born, the names that we have, these aren't mistakes. There's a spiritual realm of sorts that kind of helps guide this world along. And to me, it's, you know, when they code things by the numbers, and, you know, it's based on an understanding of this method. Another theory I have, and I have several theories, but one of them is that because things in real life do tend to happen by the numbers, and I've tried to direct people to the organic side of the matrix a lot when doing this study, because it's my discovery that, again, our names, when you calculate the numeric values of our names using the ordinal and reduction methods, you find alignments with not only your date of birth, but the dates of birth of your parents and siblings as well. And so if things in real life really do happen by the numbers, then wouldn't it stand to reason that if they're going to do fake events, whether they're mass shootings, fake terror attacks, whatever it may be, that they do it by a similar numeric code so that the subconscious, which is used to seeing things play out by the numbers, whether or not they're cognizant of the fact that that's happening, perhaps that makes it a little more believable when these things do line up with the dates and whatnot. So again, to me, this is all like a pretty new study. I came across gematria very late, like 2015, 2016, and almost 3 years now that I've been making videos and sharing this work, about 2.5 or so. So we're still trying to get our hands around, you know, what this really shows us. But the main thing I want to focus on with gematria is explain how this clues us into the nature of our reality. And the fact that my belief now is that our world that we experience, we are not a result of the randomness of the world. We're not just random collections of stardust, but our shared reality, what we experience in this planet, is the result of our consciousness. So it kind of goes the other way. And if that's the case, if we are all connected to the source through our own minds, and we are our own technical authorities, then we have power to change what reality is, not just with our thoughts, but also with our actions. And I think this kind of ties in well to the whole cryptocurrency ideas that you guys are essentially trying to establish a new norm, take the power away from the centralized banks who have claimed authority over the financial system and the currency that we use to interact with one another. And to me, if we understand that we can change reality, and that reality is more or less a construct that works alongside us as we attempt to chase our goals and follow our dreams, then maybe people will realize that, you know, it's possible and it's worth pursuing. I think a lot of people see how messed up the world is and they just think it's too far gone, there's nothing I can do. But that's exactly what the controllers would want. I mean, in order for us to put effort and believe into something, there's something that's going to help people alongside that. And that's just how our reality works. People talk about things like the secret, the power of attraction, the law of attraction. To me, this language of numerology is evidence that that's real. And to me, it's very empowering. So that's a little bit of what I want to share over at Anarchadelphia.
And you are not a software developer, but this study sort of catalyzed your software development journey. I'm also studying myself, and this is just simple JavaScript, Boolean ratios, true or false equations, coming up with these numbers, correct, with a little interface?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people have downloaded the raw files from my website and tweaked the JavaScript code because it's fairly simple. It's just, I mean, if you have an understanding of web programming to begin with, I mean, you can probably look at the code and kind of understand what's happening. It's just using arrays and taking the numeric values and assigning, or I'm sorry, taking the letters, the key codes, and assigning a numeric value to them. Yeah, my job at work is not technically a developer, but I have done development for work in the past, and now I'm kind of working in my own database that I developed. And, you know, I didn't necessarily find Gematria. Gematria more or less found me. And
Same
I came
here,
in at
man. Same here.
yeah, and I came along at a point where something needed to be pushed forward. You know, I found the work of Zachary Hubbard, and I saw he was using the Writing the Beast calculator, and it just didn't look very simple. You had to type in a phrase and then click a button, choose a cipher. I was like, this could be done way easier. And I mean, you know, I just hunkered down one day, and in about 24 hours, I had a website ready with a basic calculator. So again, it's pretty simple stuff. It just took a little bit of, you know, motivation to realize that this was needed and this was important. And I think it's helped revolutionize the study. I mean, we started looking at reverse gematria. We understood the significance of that. And, you know, I've taken Zach's work, the foundation that he built, and I've kind of taken it into a mix of astrology, looking at the sun and moon, how significant solar eclipses are and the dates on which those occur. I've been saying for almost 2 years now that, well, over 2 years, that it seems as if a lot of these events are strongly connected to the dates on which eclipses occur. And what do you know, this year, the two largest mass shootings in America both occurred 33 days away from the eclipse. We had the El Paso shooting, which is 33 days after the total solar eclipse of 2019. And we had the Virginia shooting that happened 33 days before that same total solar eclipse. Eclipse equals 33 in Pythagorean gematria. And both of the locations, the towns in which they occurred, both had gematria of the 33rd prime number. So, you know, I'm not sure exactly, like, I'm very careful in calling things fake or hoaxes. I do think a lot of these events are entirely faked, but, you know, there's some evidence, and granted, nothing's really been proven to me, but there's some evidence that some of this stuff is really happening. And ultimately, I want people to realize that what is happening is a coordinated effort, and it's with a purpose to change our minds about our own liberties. And, you know, it does seem like these secret societies at high levels are carrying these things out by the numbers through the police squads. And there's no denying the connection between police and organizations like Freemasonry. And so the structure is there. You know, it's all in place for these things to happen. Especially ever since September 11th, we've seen how many new branches of Homeland Security and you know, immigration enforcement and all these new government branches since then. So the infrastructure is there. Everything's in place. You know, if they want to lie to us, they can. So
They do.
A little bit of what I try to explain as well.
Yeah, very, very cool. I was fascinated to find out that, well, there's been a lot of speculation about August 11th, the Golden Gate, but that has many references. I'm sure if you've watched some of Flowey's work, and I actually found out about Gematria from Flowey, who found out about it from Zachary Hubbard, who's no longer attending. But the only other people that I know who study Gematria are you and Flowey. And it's Flowey's very into astrology. He has got a beautiful story about moving to Costa Rica based off of the stars and the blood moons and his wife and all this amazing, amazing stuff. And it all lined up with the numbers. And what's going on with Anarchadelphia right now, like we just looked this up. It's 33 days after the Tisha B'Av or the 8/11 or this Golden Gate Day. And it's also 888,888 days exactly after the Illuminati was created, which was May 1st, 1776.
Right. 88,888 since that date. Yep.
Yeah, that's really strange. So like we didn't plan this, but I mean, we're like little spiritual, little like, you know, esoteric people. So we want to do the full moon, and we know everything is based off of the numbers. Our tickets are $333, or we have a full moon fee, $77. You know, everything is just focused on using the numbers to our benefit. You know what I mean? The numbers are neutral.
If I could talk to that real quick too, I know like some people see things, and there's been this, I don't know if it's just in this community or whatever, but they see someone doing things with, you know, suspicious numbers, and they automatically become suspicious of that person. And I've been trying to say for the longest time, like, these numbers are not their numbers. These numbers are significant because they've discovered significance behind them.
Right.
And me, for instance, you know, my birth numerology is 33, the master teacher number. And here I am just happening to stumble into gematria and teaching it. So I kind of claim the number 33 for my own sometimes.
Me too. I'll be 33 next year in the year 2020. Perfect vision, 33. Like, I'm taking this year to really
two master numbers, 22 and 33, both.
Right. So what do you feel about the 11, the builder number 22, and the master number 33? Why branch from singularity into a double-digit system?
Well, yeah, to be perfectly honest, it's something where I've had this discussion before with people trying to explain master numbers and why they're significant, as opposed to, you know, numbers like 10 or 18. But like, what?
There's no 44.
Right.
Because it's a three-phase system. The 1 and 1 turns into the 2s, and the 2s and 2s turn into the 3s. And that's all you need, though. It's a three-phase fractal. It's the Trinity. And all mathematics is based off of that, at least what I've studied.
Sure. And, you know, with gematria, we're tending to just find matches and alignments, and whether or not those are master numbers. Sometimes there's a riddle there. Like, one thing I like to explain to people is that, you know, 22 is known as the master builder number. And if you think about it, 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 is the number of foundation. You need 4 corners for a base. And if you write out using the alphabetic order, where A is assigned 1, B is assigned 2, through Z is 26, if you write out master builder number, it sums to 220. And in numerology, there's this understanding that the number 0 does not represent anything in these results. So essentially, you're just looking at the number 22, master builder number 22. And, you know, Freemasons consider themselves master builders. You look at the National Football League, which was founded by Freemasons. You have 22 people on the field, 11 on each side. National Football League, also in the alphabetical order, equals 220.
Yeah. It's the number of yards on the field. Everything is just, it's designed around this, because I feel like if you can use the numbers to your advantage. You know what I mean? Whether you want to inflict harm or do good.
Yeah. What's your take on that? Because, you know, through my study, it does seem like they're using numbers. Now, I look at some of these
numbers. I consider myself they in that spiritual level, not in like the elitist pedophile baby eating.
But enlightened, right?
Enlightened. I feel like I am enlightened, and I learned all of that I've gained all this insight from dimethyltryptamine, DMT, a psychedelic.
Okay. I haven't done that yet, but I have a date for it set up.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I learned so much, man, about numbers and fractals and geometry, and how it's relative to the book of Genesis, and what Noah's Ark really is, and how these arcs, think of these arcs as, I'm going to put up a little video here. I'll edit it in, of what I'm trying to talk about, this animation that I created called a Luciferium. There's 3 ways an arc can move through this cube, and there's 3 tiers in it. So the 11 is just the splittings of the first one, because you only have one. You have a singularity, and when it separates itself, it's an 11, because there's 2 of itself, but it's also existing in this fractal. So the 2s also subdivide, and then the 3s subdivide, but the mathematical equation is complete at that point. So it creates a singularity, and there's this trinity.
Okay.
If you could think about it as like a metaphysical cube with a sphere inside of it, all language and symbology is designed around this specific shape.
Yeah, my belief about gematria is why these numbers are so powerful and significant is because essentially numbers are symbols. They're something that's created and by humans to understand this concept of quantity and whatnot. And whether or not we used base 10 or base 8, it seems like these numbers would always align as long as our consciousness is cognizant of this alphabetic order and how these numbers operate.
The Book of Genesis introduces us to the base 10 system, and then it explains the what Noah's Ark is, which is these 3 arcs, the 11, the 12, the 11, the 22, and the 33, and they create the Trinity. And it's basically like 3-phase electricity. That's basically the best way you could think about it, or like the flux of this like singularity.
How these things in our lives seem to happen by the numbers. I think one of the best examples I have about this, it seems like a lot of people will look at their addresses, you know, like I had one guy over, he was a friend of a friend, and I just showed him, hey, like I teach this mystical thing called gematria. Want to look at it, you know? And I only really talk about it with people who I think like are, you know, kind of with it and somewhat awake and have an open mind to things. And his full name had gematria of 99 in both the reduction methods. That would be the standard Pythagorean and the reverse method. And I was like, oh, look at that, you got 99. And at some point I mentioned that 523 was the 99th prime number. And he's like, that was my address growing up, was 523. And I was like, well, there you go, you know? And it just seems like there's a conscious connection. Like the fact that we're conscious of these things seem to have something to do with it. So my name in reverse reduction on my calculator, it's one of the base 4 ciphers. If you write out my full name, it sums to 130. And that's actually part of the reason I wear this hat with the M. Of course, I live in Milwaukee, but the M on the hat is the 13th letter. My name equals 130. If you flip it upside down, you get a W. And my name equals 203 in the alphabetic order, kind of like 23, you know, the 23rd letter. Anyway, my dad's name also equals 130 in the same cipher that mine does. When I was buying a house back in 2017, we found a house that was priced around 125,000, but there was another offer in front of us. So we went in a little bit over, and my real estate agent suggested I go for 130,000 exactly. And I was like, wow, okay, I like that number, 130, let's do it. And then I realized the address of the house is the same year that my dad was born, the same 4 digits in order. And I said, damn, that's pretty wild. And then, you know, I also pointed out that house in gematria with the S exception equals 32. And I was turning 32 years old, like just after I would move into my house. It was like 3 days later. And then the next day, my brother was my real estate agent. He got a call, and the residents asked for 3 more days of residency. So I would be moving in on my 32nd birthday. And 32 was the number I wore in hockey and baseball growing up. So I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, yeah, man, that's crazy. So
to the skeptics, though, that could be a major synchronicity, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I see it. Like, to me, this is an example of how things in our real lives, like if you or I were to pay attention to gematria of the people we meet, the dates on which we meet them, things like that, there's something going on. And
there's definitely something going on, man. 8/11 was a very, very powerful day for me. It was a portal, essentially. I lost a friend in early August, and we had a gathering where a lot of us came together on 8/11, and it fostered some, rekindled some relationships with people that I hadn't seen for so long because of certain things, but we're all doing great now. And even in Flowy, as a matter of fact, and Carmen, they were with me, and we went to Krakow, Poland. We were there for 11/11/11. And we used that sort of portal energy with some of our friends to do an awesome meditative session 11 minutes before 11/11 and 11 minutes after 11/11, right in Krakow. It was amazing. But we used, that is like sorcery right there. We used that to manifest what we're doing now, you know, what
Sure.
the Anarchadelphia and the movement and the connections of our network and bringing these people in. But for me, living my life by the numbers has always benefited me.
Okay. I'm kind of curious as to your take on the idea of that date being some sort of portal, because this is something I've been saying like long before August 11th. I released videos talking about the importance of that date, but I also said that this doesn't mean that anything huge, significant, we're not going to get a major bridge attack or a false flag. And the reason I said that is because the coding was too strong. Like when you look at 9/11, right? You can't look at the Rudy Giuliani and the governor of New York. You're not going to get the clear riddles like you had on August 11th. It was just too simple. And just as a quick example, I'm not going to get on too much about this, but Golden Gate in Gematria equals 45 in both reduction methods. When the Golden Gate Bridge opened in San Francisco, the city of San Francisco was 4,545 weeks old, 4545. On the date 8/11 this year, their mayor, whose name sums to 54, which is the gematria of 45, she turned 45 on August 11th. And, you know, that's just a couple of it. But to me, it's like there's these dates. And we saw this with September 23rd, 2015, back in a few years ago, where everyone was looking at this astrological alignment, talking about how it was from Revelation, this, you know, alignment with the stars and the moon. And they're like, oh, this is going to be something big. And all we got that day was the Pope visiting the White House, and it happened at 9/23. It was his 923rd day in office and a bunch of other things. But there was no major false flag terror attack or anything like that. But to me, it's like there's some dates that suddenly, you know, every few years, these dates come around that are really significant. And when I look back at 9/11, and, you know, I've been thinking about this for a while, like the idea that there was some sort of portal, that we entered some sort of new dimension, some sort of reality on that day. I give that a lot of serious thought. And, you know, the global consciousness changed that day, especially in America, where people suddenly felt less safe.
Right.
You know, it wasn't, you know, a few months later when I was at work, when people would look at an airplane and there's nothing weird about it. It was just coming in for a landing, but it was a low airplane and people were freaking out.
Right.
And
so maybe people are just more energetically receptive or easily moldable when certain astrology aligns, because that's where it all stems from what I understand. I mean, I didn't give a shit about astrology forever until I became a flat earther.
With flat earth, I mean, I don't get into it too much because to me, what the whole debate around is like, there's just a misunderstanding about what reality is. And I mean, the earth behaves as a round object. Like, you know, you can go in one direction constantly and get to this, you know, just get to the same place. But it's rendered in this, like, so the inhabitants of it, that it appears flat. And it has to be that way. I don't know.
We're going off topic with that.
Yeah, that's fine. But as far as August 11th and the astrology that went into that date,
right. It was a very, very powerful day for me.
And if you look at the astrology, what Bobby uncovered is that if you look at September 11th, 2001, the moon, I might get this backwards, but it was one or the other. The moon was in the Silver Gate, and Jupiter and Saturn were both equidistant from the moon on the ecliptic. And it was within about 10 degrees or so, you know, so they're all kind of conjunct. Well, on August 11th this year, it was the exact opposite. The moon was in the Golden Gate. It was exactly 180 degrees across from where it was on 9/11/2001, and Jupiter and Saturn were again equidistant from it, but opposite sides. So there was something really significant to be said about the relationship between 9/11 and 8/11. And there was numerology connecting the dates as well. 8 plus 11 plus 20 plus 19 was 58. Now, if you add every number 1 through 58, you get 1711. And August 11th this year was 17 years, 11 months exactly after 9/11/2001.
I've been seeing 7/11 17s all over the place. They're chasing me.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I've noticed that, you know, in my group of friends and people I know in real life, like that I've shared this with, it's pretty wild how people feel like they have a lucky number or this number that follows them. And I type in the gematria of that number or their name, and there's always a connection somehow. This came up with my sister-in-law, who says her lucky number is 13, which is kind of a funny number to call lucky. But if you write out 13, it sums to 45 in both reduction ciphers. She was born on the 4th of May. It equals 117 in reverse. Her birth numerology is 117. And it goes on and on with that. But, you know, I gave her like a whole PowerPoint presentation on the number 13 and her connections to it.
I mean, numbers rule everything. I mean, if you look at, for example, the Israeli flag, the Star of David, that is a geometric representation of the source.
It's something to do with like Jupiter and Saturn, I heard someone just talk about how they become conjunct every 20, I forget. I can't remember, but it has something to do with when they pass on the ecliptic. They pass each other 3 times in 360 degrees. And this, like, if you draw out points on the ecliptic where they pass, you end up getting the Star of David. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. And it could also have to do with, you know, it's a 6-pointed star, and 6 is a number that's significant to man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all have, you know, carbon, for instance, is 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, I believe. So, yeah, I think it just makes a lot of sense. But what you said, I believe, is true. There's something about the geometry of the universe, this understanding that is lying behind it. It's not just some evil symbolism, but, you know, a display of knowledge, I think.
Well, I think the symbolism is neutral also. You know, you see Toyota driving around all over the place with their little logo, which is designed to sacred geometric perfection, like all other huge corporations that put this in front of our faces.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not really the symbols or the symbology or well, I guess the language could be used against us, but it's the forces behind these corporate entities that are pushing forth this dystopian ecosystem.
Right. It's like there's people in these corporations. Some of them are evil. You know, the bulk of them are just doing work, just trying to make a living and whatnot. So I try not to classify things as particularly good or particularly evil in that light, because there's a dichotomy, and the gematria supports that. You know, there's a duality in these things. Like, if you type in the word numbers into the calculator, you'll see it has the same gematria as the word duality. That's because, you know, a lot of times too, people will email me with their name gematria and their birth numerology, and they're like, what does this mean about me? And I just tell them, I don't know. I don't know what, like, just because your name sums to a certain number doesn't mean you're this type of way. Maybe it does in combination with the date you were born in astrology and whatnot, but I'm not that advanced at this moment. So to me, it's just like, pay attention to the numbers now, because when I first calculated my gematria, I found that in the reverse alphabetic order, my name sums to 337, and I was sitting in cubicle A3037 at work. My first property tax bill was 3,370. I was born 3,307 days after my brother.
Taxation is theft.
It's just wild how this stuff lines up. And
yeah, and I don't think it has any emotion. I think the framework is there. Every possibility is occurring, and the people that understand that they can manifest the reality, because they are manifesting the reality through, you could just look around you, man. Like they have control.
You know, when you look at businesses that code themselves with numbers of masonry and things like that, it's not necessarily evil or wrong. It's just that these people are in it for business and they're trying to make money.
I mean,
and
that's what we've done here too, but not necessarily to make money, but to use the portal to bring more people together, to help spread our message, you know?
Yeah, and it's all
We're
dependent
not in this
on
for money, man. That's for sure.
well, yeah, and I mean, when people do things by the numbers, like, I don't see that as inherently bad. You know, some people think, "Ooh, you're dabbling in witchcraft or whatever," and it's like, no, it's a recognition
What
of
kind of
what
is
we live
witchcraft?
in.
I think it's like sorcery for sure. I really do. You know,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time like studying and worshiping these numbers and their ratios and pi and Tao and phi, and it makes so much sense when you tie it into language and numbers and different types of languages more so. You know, Hebrew is much different than the English language. It was designed much better because the aleph, the a is also the numerical value of 1. In our alphabet, A is not 1. It can be 1, you know, but it's not 1. And in Hebrew, every character has a numerical value, which is really interesting.
Well, yeah, all these letters are built up off of other letters. And the most fascinating thing about Hebrew to me is that the language itself and the symbols that they use are actually based on hand gestures that were used to communicate before the written language was really known. And
interesting. I'm going to look for something. I want to show you this little thing that I found. It's really cool. I'm going to send it to you.
There's some scholars that have studied Hebrew and talk about how these because these symbols are so powerful, they've essentially been harnessing power over time.
Right.
And they can produce, like, if you speak certain Bible verses from the Torah in Hebrew, they're actually capable of producing a spiritual experience beyond what can normally be obtained through a simple reading and understanding.
Oh, I
And
know.
that,
And the book of Genesis, it teaches you all about this type of stuff. The book of Genesis does. If you take the personified approach out of it and you look at it like a mathematician, it's
yeah,
very revealing.
the characters of the first verse of Genesis, for instance, can be laid out across a torus, and they end up like occupying exactly opposite sides of the other.
Yeah, it's the
It's
word.
really fascinating.
It's the
It's a
word
little bit
God.
behind my comprehension, but I know that there's something very
Yeah,
esoteric behind
that's
that.
so funny that you said that, man, because that's exactly what a Luciferium is about. It's explaining how information moves from the center of the sphere to the apex and ultimately cloning itself, which is a mathematical formula, and it traces out the word God through like 7 different pi ratios. It's really fucking crazy. All right, cool. I found it. Check this out, man.
Oh yes, yeah, I've seen this. All the Hebrew characters based
Yeah.
on the Star of David. I think this is. I saw something similar to this with English. It uses a circle though
Yes.
instead of the Star of David. So all the English characters can be derived from the simple circle and
More so like a cube. Like if you have
yeah,
a cube with a sphere inside of it.
yeah, that was it. And then whereas Hebrew, you can build all the characters off of different permutations of the Star of David. That's pretty interesting to me, and I think this is legit.
It's like geometric understanding of expression. Language is so beautiful, man.
Yeah, and
It's
that
used against us.
epiphany about how, like I said, like, you know, the Hebrew language was originally symbols, and then it developed into this. And when I look at how this language is coded, how English is coded, but for instance, and how it's so centered around pi, like I started one of my main presentations off with the fact that on a calculator, 22 divided by 7 gives you the first 3 digits of pi. It's the smallest equation to do so. And if you write out 22 divided by 7 in the alphabetic order, it equals 314. And when you think about how English developed over hundreds of years through different permutations, through Old English, it all developed from Latin over time. You know, there was never like one direct transition from Latin to English. And is the fact that 22 divided by 7 equals 314, is that planned? Was that designed by somebody? Or is that just the basis of us being this these geometric representations of the geometric universe? I don't know how else to better explain it, but
the geometric hyperspace.
I think that's totally possible when I look at how these things are. And I mean, the level of coordination and planning that would have to be done in order to construct our language this accurately I would think computers would have to be used in order to get all this coding in. So it's either that or humans have a way of bringing about these patterns through speech. And I totally believe that, just based on, again, the fact that the Bible begins with the idea that the letter and number are somehow coexistent.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So when I went to start reading the Bible, I couldn't really get past like a few paragraphs before I said, I have to figure out what the word God is before I move forward. And once I realized that it is simply creation, it's the formula of creation.
Yeah.
The Bible makes so much sense when you take the personified things out. It's basically the catalyst to the next fractal of experience. And as things fractal out more, they get more detailed and expansive, but it all stems back from this singularity, and it is God, basically.
Yeah,
it's what we all are. It's what our subconscious is.
Right. And the word God, as we understand it in the Bible, if you actually compare our English Bible to like Hebrew texts, you find that the word God translates into 2 totally different words in Hebrew. That would be Yahweh, or Elohim. And to my understanding, Yahweh represents essentially the infinite possibilities, the ether from which everything that happens in our manifested reality is pulled from. Elohim, meanwhile, is the current manifested reality, the plane of existence that we see and feel and all our senses are based in. And when you think about that idea, the fact that there's actually 2 totally different definitions for God, but somehow in our religion they've been dumbed down essentially to just one word, it really kills a lot of the understanding of that, to have that separation between the understanding of the infinite potential and what is already here. And to what you said, I think that ties in, because it's more about the formula of God. And when we talk about the Kabbalah, which Gematria is essentially a tool of to better understand reality, and it's a tool of mysticism. And when you look at the Kabbalah, which again is, has a lot to do and it ties into the Torah. Oh, where was I going with this thought, Pat?
Damn it, get it. It was good.
I know. Crap. Sometimes I do that.
It's okay. It's okay.
If I don't have numbers in front of me and I don't have my blog post to look at, I'll get off on one tangent and go too far. But yeah, I mean, what we were talking about, this God formula.
God formula.
That's what it's more about. Is like,
what I try to do is I try to teach people that there's a difference between spirit and God. And God is so subservient to spirit. Spirit just chose to use the directory of God. God is it is a singularity. It's how consciousness can possess matter. Because without the God formula, you can't have the Fibonacci sequence. Because the God formula starts, and then when it ends, it does two things. It collapses back in on itself, but then expands into matter. But it needs spirit or life. There needs to be some sort of conception.
Yeah, and I got that thought back a little bit. Through my observations, I feel like a lot of this gematria that's encoded into the Bible, I think it may be, some of it anyway, might be explaining the actual underlying code of life and death. And I say this, and this is, again, just another theory I have, but I think it's pretty interesting. In a lot of my work, I talk about what we call the eclipse crucifixion code. And this is, to me, it's entirely logical. It's based in the New Testament, the story of Jesus Christ. And when he was crucified, darkness fell over the sky, as described in 3 of the 4 Gospels.
Reminds me of a painting that I painted. I'll show you.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of historians interpret this to be, a solar eclipse, that he was crucified during an eclipse. And when you start paying attention to the deaths of major celebrities, particularly like rappers, because rappers has the same gematria as Jesus, you start to see like there's a serious eclipse code. Like you look at Biggie, Notorious B.I.G. In ordinal, Biggie equals 39. So does the word eclipse in reverse reduction. He died on the date 3/9, and on that date there was a total solar eclipse.
So that could be coincidental, of course, but maybe that's just how, because the universe really isn't us. The universe is like our higher self. So maybe that's just how it wanted things to go that time,
Yeah, and again, I've moved on, I think, from claiming to know that these people are getting murdered or whatever on these dates. Another thing I point to was,
they're definitely being murdered on these dates. Yeah, there's definitely an agenda to just like instill fear and use the astrological portals with the numbers of the time to just like fucking instill fear into them, like injecting vaccines into an infant,
And I'm not sure that all these people are really even dying. Like, you hear about someone like Chester Bennington, and it's like his band, like the tweets that they put out after his death all had like 322 gematria. It's too odd. And
who the fuck
but it's
knows
all about
what
harnessing
goes on behind. I mean, I lived in Hollywood for a while. It's a dark place, man.
I know.
And I'm sure when you're running Hollywood, it's you have a lot of skeletons in your closet. You know what I mean? You can kill people and make them disappear forever, and they can go live their life doing whatever they do for you. You know what I mean?
But to me, the goal of these deaths, these celebrity deaths, are more about maintaining control over the public consciousness and giving people some sort of trauma in their life.
Yeah.
So definitely. Whether or not they're dying, it's just like we can speculate that on all day. It's not necessarily important. What I see is like Chris Cornell dies 3 months, 3 days before the Great American Eclipse.
Right.
He's got same. I'm sorry.
But he could have been sacrificed for it.
Yeah, totally. And then you look at Chester. He died 33 days before the same eclipse. Chris and Chester both equal 33. Yeah.
And he could have been a sacrifice as well,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the last thing that happened is that these two guys just killed themselves on those days. Like that to me is the last thing that happened.
It scares me that people don't really like pay attention to this type of stuff. Like somebody said it recently. I was watching something, but if like a 9/11 happened now, like people would forget about it like in 6 months.
It's an interesting thought, I guess. I mean, we are certainly more accustomed to disasters like mass shootings and stuff. And, we've had Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, all these mass death incidents. Well, so it would certainly mean less. Yeah.
with the rise of all of this evil, for lack of a better term, actually somebody said this to me today, like the more that we speak the truth and bring the light out, the more that the darkness will bring people towards us, because we're really the light. There is the dark. We're light workers, so the dark workers will show up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like the more effort we put in. I mean, we saw it quickly with the Gematrinator. I mean, not to take too much credit for it, but after my calculator went online, you know, this Gematria really started to blow up even bigger. And within 4 or 5 months, they deleted Zach's channel for the first time. And we always thought that they would never actually delete his channel because all he's doing is just doing math. And they still had the gall to do it. And then they deleted it like 17 more times.
Yeah, he takes.
And to me, it's like, how can people see this and not have an understanding of how important this is? You know,
Zach takes a much more practical approach to it, and he has spent a lot of time figuring out, like identifying false flags with Gematria. No question. However, he doesn't get into like the esoteric side of things or the organic side of things, or like the astrological impacts to these numbers and language. He doesn't talk about all that. He talks shit about my speakers and me. That's why he's not coming anymore.
Yeah, I saw some of that. I don't want to get too involved with it. Like, I mean, you know, I wouldn't have the following I have if it weren't for Zach. So like, you know, he saw my work, my first video, and he put it on his channel like immediately.
Yeah, I mean, he supported us as well. I don't understand why he did that to himself. You know, he just, I heard him talk. I heard it from through the grapevine. He was like downing on Passio. Then I heard that he was downing on Derek Rose, and then I watched the video. He was downing on me, and he called me 3 days before this, and he was like, "I don't really know if I want to come out to Philly. My house is getting vandalized. I'm worried for my girl." I'm like, "Dude, I just like promoted the shit out of you and put you all over everything. You're a part of this. Got you an Airbnb, ready to come." And he was like, he said on his live stream, they're supposedly going to pay me back for travels. I'm like, dude, you need to be like my ally right now. It takes a lot to put one of these things on. I'm giving you a platform. You're like the OG of Gematria, and you're going to like fucking bash on it like that. So,
I mean, yeah, like he and I have had our differences about, you know, what we take on Gematria and what we think is going on. He kind of froze me out on one of his shows back in like February. And, you know, and then like he went on another podcast. He went on that Tinfoil Hat podcast with Sam Tripoli. And for some reason, he never mentioned the calculator. Like he could have just told him to go to my website and type the stuff in so people could see it. Would have made the presentation a hell of a lot better. And he ignored my website the whole time. And it's like at the time I was suggesting that one of these deaths was organic. And
anyway, fuck him. So, yeah. So he uses the calculator that you created.
Right.
And I found out about the calculator through my friend Floey, who found out about Zach.
Yeah, and Zach has given me criticisms too, saying my work is too complex and whatnot. And I understand that it doesn't reach the broader audience, but I'm not here to duplicate his work. And plus, I feel like a lot of the stuff we're discovering, like we're still making discoveries, and we're trying to understand the basis of this code. So, you know, I talk about things like, and I'm very consistent in my work when I talk about solar eclipses, and when you have these false flags, look at the numerology of the mayor, because there's always a very clear riddle there, and sometimes it's the exact same numbers in one numerology from a mayor to the next city at the next shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm trying to develop this so that, you know, my dream is that one day we can say there's going to be a false flag in this city on this date, and through the symbolism and understanding and looking at past false flags, we can, like talking about Zach, he called that there would be a major shooting on the weekend of the Las Vegas shooting. We had the biggest shooting in history, and that had to do with Yom Kippur and the holiday of atonement. And sure enough, it was in Sin City, and you know, Yom Kippur is about judgment for sins. So things like that, like we can pick up on some of that, but I want to get like, I would say that on
a more speculative and like esoteric sense, that during those shootings that were happening there in Vegas at that time, there was also the contriving or the catalyst for some sort of, you know, strengthening of whatever the people are doing right in there in the cluster, all that energy feeding off of the energy, off of the fear to fuel your thing.
I mean, they had their obelisk in their pyramid right there. Like, so
Yeah.
all the footage of the video, you had their
Well,
symbolism in your
you
mind
gotta, you
immediately.
gotta say it's our pyramid and our obelisk, because it does belong to us. You know,
Right.
all of these symbols and all of this knowledge belongs to us. Just because there's a small group of people who got it all, but look what happens when they hold it back. You know what I mean? They take all the money, they fucking become the government of the world, and they create they create religion and take away spirituality. For what? I don't know, man. Why would you want to do that as a human being? You know, why would you want to?
Well, yeah, I have no idea, and my lack of understanding of the motives of these people is what leads me to question reality and how much like are these people in high positions of power, are they sort of playing like a role that's necessary in this world? I think there's a lot to be said for this
Mm,
reality being some sort of like spiritual test. You know what I
you know,
mean?
maybe they use the understanding of beauty and spirit to gain all this money and power and greed, and it destroyed their spirituality, and that's all they have now.
Sure, and it probably gets worse with each successive generation too, because these kids just see their parents and how they live and how unhappy and miserable their parents probably are, and then they grow up into much of the same, and they just try to. Their only sense of satisfaction and happiness is to get more things, experience more things.
I've been living out of a backpack for 4 years. I have an office, but I live out of a backpack, you know, and travel, and I'm a minimalist, and I've never really wanted to get into that like material realm, you know,
Right?
and be
Yeah, I mean,
possessed
neither. I
by
mean, they started paying me more money at work, and I just saved more money, you know, and
it.
this
Buy
is like
Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin.
yeah, I mean, part of my journey to Anarchadelphia, I'm definitely going to be learning a little bit about cryptocurrency because I'm not really into it that much, and I've been pretty skeptical of it. You know, then again, I was skeptical about Gematria. That's kind of why I dived into it and created a calculator, is because it seemed too simple to be real. And you know, once I broke everything down and saw how we spelled certain dates, certain numbers, things like that, it just all started to click with me. So I do plan on probably, you know, making a little investment in something, but you know, again, I got a lot of learning to do. So
Yeah, I mean, you can hit me up anytime too, because you got to be aware, like Bitcoin is completely public. You know, it's not for nefarious activity at all. That's what you want to run a Monero node for. And yeah, well, you
yeah,
got a lot to learn. You know, I mean, that's what we're doing this there for, though, man. Just for everybody
exactly. I
to,
mean,
yeah.
if it is that evil and wrong, I mean, I haven't seen it yet. Like, there's definitely some strange symbolism. Like, I did a post on Bitcoin and talk about how it seems to have like circle, number of the beast stuff. I don't know, is it coincidence?
And I think that Satoshi is a group of government officials or a
Seems like
government
it.
team. They've got 6%, well, a million of the tokens, 6%. I think that'll be like 6% once all 21 million are mined. That's a huge amount. Not to mention how much they have now that they're trading back and forth and trying to get it. But I don't think that Bitcoin will be the world reserve currency. I think it will be whatever one world government shows up and says that this is it, you know. But Bitcoin will always exist, except I think that if you use it, you'll be discredited in the system, social crediting.
What do you think about Libra? Do you think this is their first step towards a global currency?
If they just open their eyes, they would see that there already is one. There are several, you know. Um, I think that they're more concerned with Libra because they have exposure to 2 billion people, and they can, you know, bank all those people immediately.
Sure.
Censorship, we want censorship resistance. That's why decentralization is great. That's why you want to run your own node, and you want to expand the network as much as possible.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, did you want to like get into censorship at all during this discussion? I mean, it's something I've faced, I'm sure.
I've had 3 channels in the past 3 years. One was actually just like kind of YouTube for the product, the videos. So it wasn't actually like a channel. But when I first started this project called Lady Cryptic, I
Mhm.
know it was like right during the cryptocurrency boom, and the channel was growing like that. It was going so fast, and there were no algorithms designed to capture certain interactions. Like the YouTube algorithms hadn't like accurately defined a cryptocurrency user at that point, you know?
Okay.
So I watched 3 channels, Crypto's News, Ivan on Tech, and then Box Mining. They all had 3,000 subscribers, and I subscribed to all of them. This was like late 2016, and I watched them all go up to triple digits. The channel that we started with, the State of Anarchy, we've been around for a year, and we just broke 2,000 subscribers. That's like definitely some censorship.
Yeah, okay. Because on YouTube, I mean, it's so bad. Like, I'll upload a video and I'll check my subscriber count a couple minutes later, and it'll be down 2 subscribers, and it'll be down 2 or 3 more.
Yeah,
This happens every time I upload a video.
that's what's happening to us. Like, I don't even want to use YouTube anymore. I just
It's tough. I mean, there's literally no other platform. There was one, I can't remember what it was called. Like, it was some kind of bit thing, not BitChute.
BitChute. Yeah, BitChute.
No, it was because it shut down. It was like right as YouTube started to really censor stuff, we all started to move within a few months to this other platform, and then that platform just disappeared. Like, they stopped running it. So I was like, okay, now it is on to BitChute and other like blockchain videos. I mean, at least this way they can't completely delete it.
I just want
But who's just searching for videos on BitChute unless you're already looking for truth and alternate stuff?
right?
And that's really what killed me. Like, June of last year, I did a video the same day that the rapper XXXTentacion died. And that video was really big, maybe partially because I predicted that on that date, we were going to get a major eclipse sacrifice. And it turned out to be a #1 selling rapper. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. So I did a video. And within a couple of weeks, it was up to over 300,000 views. And I was like, damn, like, this is cool. You know, finally, it's like this stuff is getting traction. And mind you, this is my second YouTube channel. My first one was deleted in February of 2018.
Do you monetize?
I never monetized, no.
Okay. Interesting. And they shut you down without monetizing.
Yeah, I mean, I only had 7,000 subscribers on my first channel. I'm
That's
back
a lot,
up to, yeah, it's not bad. I mean, but like, to me, it's like, how could you censor a channel so small? Like, what are they so afraid of?
Same. That's how I feel with the State of Anarchy. I mean, how can we only have 2,000? How come after we go to these shows and network and meet hundreds of people, and then we lose 2 subscribers on YouTube?
Exactly. There's a formula behind it. And I did work on my old channel. What I did is I would visit a video at a certain like interval. So every hour or so after it was uploaded. And you can see that the view count is clearly a formula based on the time and number of likes. Or maybe the number of likes is a formula, but it's so consistent from video to video that it's impossible for it to be organic. Not only that, but then once it got to a certain count, the likes would freeze for a while, and YouTube has explanations for all this, but it's definitely fishy. And so my first channel got deleted. I was starting to get videos like to get 50,000 views or whatever. I made one on the SpaceX launch. Remember, they sent the guy in the Tesla Roadster up into outer space?
If you believe in space, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't believe any of that crap. So I explained how it was done by the numbers and how the death of David Bowie tied in because they were playing David Bowie music. And like 4 or 5 days after I uploaded the video, it went from like 10 or 20,000 views, and it started getting like thousands of views per hour. And I had 350 more likes than dislikes on the video. But as it started to get viral, all of a sudden the dislikes started to rapidly catch up. And by the end of the day, it had 10 more dislikes than likes. And then the views stopped going up because now it was like a bad video. And I was like, this is insane. My channel got deleted less than 2 weeks after that. And now even on this second channel, like I said, I had that one video for about 350,000 views. Well, now none of my videos are getting over 2,000 views. And so
we don't get a lot either.
I mean, what's happening is it's their search algorithms. My channel, no matter what you search for, even if you search for every single word I put in the tags, my videos will not pop up until you get down to like the 3rd or 4th page. Whereas before, because our work is so simple, I mean, if we get a false flag, we don't have to wait for the news to look for clues that there's bullshit in the news. We just run the numbers and make a video. So like within an hour of the news breaking, we'd have the first conspiracy related videos on these things. And that's why these videos were getting so many views so quickly. But now you get nothing but mainstream media sources for pages and pages and pages. So they'll let our channels up, it seems like now, but they've efficiently changed their search formulas enough so that they don't have to worry about our work being shown in the results of people who haven't seen videos like ours before, I think.
That's why it's so important to have events like Anarchadelphia and Anarcho Vegas, Anarchazona, Anarcho Poco, Anarcho Portugal. And please, if anybody's watching this, feel inspired to create your own, you know. We need this, you know, and ours is a little bit different than the other ones. I mean, obviously we're all different. We're all are you a statist? Are you an anarchist?
I guess I don't really have a set definition on that. I mean, when I think of anarchy, you know, I don't think of people looting stores and starting fires. I think of anarchy as essentially just being your own authority, the recognition that we all have that power within us, and we don't need to look to someone else to tell us what to do and what not to do. As long as we're not hurting anybody, and as long as our actions are benefiting the greater good or whatever, then it shouldn't be illegal. So, and you know, that goes into things like, you know, drugs. How many people are in jail sitting and rotting away because of something they did to themselves?
I was one of them, you know.
Were you? That's too bad, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately, I've stayed out of that. I mean, I don't really do a whole lot of drugs, so I can't really get caught with much, but it's just like the fact that that's out there. I mean, it's amazing. And I am glad that at least in my lifetime, we are making progress. Like I don't know if, you know, 10, 12 years ago, if you told me that, you know, I'd live next door to a state that had legal marijuana, I would be like shocked. So it's good to see some of that coming into play. I don't think we're anywhere near there where we need to be that yet, though, until there's education about drugs and maybe even the public school system and explaining what these drugs are and why certain drugs are bad. Like I look at a drug like heroin and I don't fucking see any use in that. I'm not going to ever do that. I would, you know, but
I was addicted to heroin for several years.
It's a powerful thing. I mean, my nephew had problems with it too. But when I look at things like, you know, acid, mushrooms, things that give you these spiritual awakenings, like those are probably illegal for a reason. And I would like to see those types of things, you know, there should be like a clinic where people could go and do that for the first time or whatever. And, you know, they found that ketamine, for instance, can help people with depression and now you're starting to see ketamine clinics. So
very, 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 very small doses. At larger doses, ketamine is extremely disassociating, psychedelic, and addictive.
I've never done ketamine either. I've seen people who have taken ketamine and I'm like, I don't want to be like that, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's very, very bizarre spiritual tool. It definitely is, like the psychedelics are.
Sure. I guess the only thing I haven't done that I still aspire to is DMT. And for that, I have a date set up. I'm going to do that by the numbers completely. So cool. That's going to be in 2022. It's a little ways away yet.
All right. Well, we'll get you set up.
I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, man. So you want to talk a little bit about your workshop? What it's called? It's an hour workshop. It's $25.
Sure. So in the workshop, I mean, I definitely plan on talking with anybody who's there and taking questions. It's, you know, I don't mind it being a little bit of an open forum for people who want to understand a little bit more about it. I do plan on kind of discussing my journey, my awakening through the numbers, so to speak. All the way back to my discovery. You know, when I started looking at this, it was all conspiracy theory to me. I didn't have an understanding of this spiritual realm necessarily that could help be guiding some of this stuff. So, you know, the fact that the very first instructional video I did, I was talking about the number 227. I touched on that earlier because, you know, it's a number connected to pi in the circle. And I start off with that number in my first ever instructional. And the weirdest thing that happened to me is that I started to realize while making this that these numbers that I'm thinking about and talking about started to manifest themselves in my work. And, you know, people looked at the length of my video and they're like, oh, interesting numbers there. It's an upside down 911 with a 33 in the length of the video. And I was like, okay, well, that's just how it turned out. The most fascinating thing, though, was that in order to get this presentation ready, I took 3 pages of notes. And I did this on a Skype call with a friend of mine who lives overseas and is also into numerology. And we finished these 3 pages. Everything was solid. Everything was flowing right. And I was like, I think we're good, man. Like, I'm ready to start rolling on this tomorrow. And I was like, what time is it over there in Serbia? And he says, it's 7:22. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like, let's end the call, right? So we end the call, and I come back the next day, and he sends me some messages like in all caps. It says, look at the call time. It was exactly 2 hours and 27 minutes to the second.
Nice.
And then the other thing I talk about in that video is the number 777, because that's the first number that sums to 314 when you write it out.
It also makes a triangle, an equilateral triangle. 60 degrees, 180 degrees, 777 when you put them there.
Yeah, and when I fucking exported the video from Windows Movie Maker, it came out to exactly 777 megabytes.
Nice.
And I'm
my Monero node right now is 77.7 gigabytes. I swear. Yeah, it just finished downloading.
Well, here I am. So, yeah. But yeah, like, and then that started this cycle of me like realizing that this isn't just a conspiracy theory. This is deep. Like, this is deep stuff. And I have another story too about like the day I decided that I needed to work on gematria and share it. I don't want to get too much into that. I don't want to spoil it, but it totally reshaped my understanding of reality. Me personally, I had a very intense spiritual experience when I was 16. It was right before 9/11, coincidentally enough.
How old are you?
And, right now I'm 34. So this was back when I was 16. I just turned 16 years old. And but throughout my 20s, I was largely ignorant of God. Like I believed and I kind of knew that was going on, but I didn't have any reason necessarily to chase it or pursue it. I wasn't guided there. But then I realized that through this numerology study that I was seeing things that were impossible unless there was some perhaps conscious being sitting alongside me, you know, helping guide me through this journey. To me, that really brought me a lot of peace, because when I first found gematria, it was chaotic. You know, it flipped my worldview upside down. All of a sudden, everything was evil. But then it started to turn around, and now I try to talk about the organic side. And, you know, it's not what I focus on primarily, because I do want to expose people who are doing dark, evil things by the numbers. But again, why are they doing things by the numbers? It's because they have an understanding of this spiritual system that we're in. So to me, that's enriching, that's enlightening. And unless we all have some sort of basic understanding of that, then I don't think we can get to the real bottom of what's happening unless we at least see, you know, what's connected and how we are connected to, you know, like we said, the source, or more or less.
Yeah. We certainly manifest our reality. Playing with the numbers has helped me a lot. But I think you have to have an understanding of them. You can't just say 333 or whatever, or 1111 and all that. I understand them in like a quantum mechanical way. Mm-hmm. I just sent you a link to a Luciferium.
Okay.
The animation that I created. That I kind of like, maybe it'll help. It's like super artsy fartsy poetic, but I was trying to put like a creative spin on like an actual mathematical equation and bring in spirituality to it.
In the very few times that I've actually like done something by the numbers, I just tend to use gematria of whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish or whatnot. And again, it's not something I really live by, because, you know, it's so strange how I can do things and the numbers just seem to manifest on their own. Like you know, when I put up my website, for instance, it was exactly 137 days before my birthday, and I didn't plan that. But it's, you know, 137 is the 33rd prime, 33 the master teacher number. I have 33 birth numerology. And in gematria, webmaster equals 137. I'm like, I didn't plan this, but... And then also, my name, Derek Tikkuri, sums to 142 in ordinal. That's the reverse value of the word gematria. My first name has the same gematria as numbers. My last name has the same gematria as letters. So how odd is it that, you know, someone who's so coded with the numbers of gematria just happened to be the one to come along and build the calculator? And,
yeah. Wow, this is so crazy. And I am looking at it right now. It is the creation of the Illuminati up until Friday, September 13th, the full moon is... It's
5/8. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. And, you know, someone mentioned that and they're like, oh, you better be careful. And it's like, guys, you don't understand it. Like, if this was something that's...
us, you know, this is a very powerful... I feel like we're using the portal to our benefit.
If what you guys are doing has a goal of ultimately toppling the control system that perhaps the Illuminati helped create in the first place, then those numbers just will manifest as an antithesis. Like, you know, it's something I look at and I just kind of snicker, because, I mean, there's going to be a date that's that many days after the Illuminati. Like, you could really find a spooky number in anything if you want, but that one is a cool alignment.
Yeah, and it's
I agreed when I saw it.
33 days after 8/11 also, which is interesting. I'm more interested in the framework of the universe and how the mathematical patterns have consciousness, and how we as human species have been able to basically use that as witchcraft.
Yeah, it's cool. And like, I don't desire necessarily to dabble in things like, I don't know. I'd have to talk to you a little bit more at length, I think, about like what you do by the numbers and how it happens, and what you're going for and things like that. Like I said, to me, it just seems like things manifest naturally, and I don't really have to think about it. So, I don't want to talk about all that on here, but it'll definitely be an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So when are you planning on coming down? You're going to come for the whole conference?
Yeah, I have it scheduled, so I'm going to leave on Wednesday. I'm going to drive down there. So I'm going to leave Wednesday after work and get there at some point during Thursday and check in. And yeah, I should be all set and ready by Friday. And then I plan on staying through at least Monday morning. So
cool.
That's all tentative, but that's where I'm thinking. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're really excited to have you.
Awesome.
We actually
I'm excited to be there.
We connected before the whole Zach fallout. We just been kind of playing phone tag for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited. I was excited to have both of your perspectives there, but
I'm a guest occasionally on Zach's radio show, and a lot of people have commented on how cool it is to hear kind of two different perspectives. And perhaps there's a little more work to be done. It's not like Zach ever stopped reaching out to me or anything. I just we had a little disagreement, and I was kind of salty about it, but we've been keeping in touch back and forth, and it's only a matter of time. I think, like, ultimately we have to do something to push this knowledge forward and help contribute to the greater understanding of what's going on around us. So yeah, I was kind of looking forward to meeting Zach in the flesh for a change, but yeah, that'll come down the road.
Yeah, eventually, when the numbers make it happen.
Yeah, there'll be some crazy alignment that we didn't see until after it happened, most likely. I'm sure that'll happen.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well,
do you know what day I'll be having my workshop?
You will be having your workshop on Friday during our networking break.
Okay.
Networking, mingling, that's where some of the workshops will happen. They're more so just like round tables. So.
All right, cool. Well, I will be ready. Like I said, I'll put some stuff together, and I don't know. I guess it could go many ways. If someone wants me to like decode something on the fly or look at their numerology, it's just like the things with when people ask me to code their numbers, it's difficult unless I have the full palette, right? Like unless I have their parents, their siblings, things like that. Then I can absolutely pick stuff out and be like, okay, like, just for instance, like my brother, who was one of the first people I ran numerology on his family, his first wife, her name sums to 130 in ordinal. And their son, when he was born, she was exactly 1,313 weeks old. Wow. And his name in ordinal sums to the 13th Fibonacci number. Wow. And then my brother's second wife comes along and she says her lucky number is 13 and she's 13 years younger than him. So I was like, I mean, you don't have to try hard sometimes. It's just, boom. It's like, there's the number 13 all over the place for you.
So, what do you think it is? It's you're in the right place at the right time thing, or is it a glitch in the matrix because you're aware of how it's...
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting thought. Like when you say it's a glitch. Okay, so, we touched on flat earth and I don't want to get back into that, but what I see when I hear flat earth is that reality doesn't behave as we would expect it, right? It's kind of a limitation of our reality, of our existence. And when I look at gematria and numerology like this, like all these 13s that lined up amazingly with the birth of my nephew, are we meant to discover that? Is that just like some kind of coding that's put into the matrix, so to speak, that they just figured no human would ever get to the consciousness level of understanding and calculating? You know what I mean?
I doubt it. I don't think that Source...
I don't think so either.
I don't think Source has the ability to create anything incomprehensible other than like a moment of amnesia, where it sort of like dilutes itself and possesses some organic life, and then they grow for 80 years and contemplate on what they are and they die, basically.
Right. I think what's more likely is that the number 13 is like a number of creation or something.
Well,
And
there's 13 months actually. If you
yeah,
make them all 28, you get a 13th month calendar.
right, right. So 12 lunar months is actually 354 days. And so it falls 11 days short. And then every 33 years, you need to add 1 year to a lunar calendar to catch it up with the solar calendar. So in Hebrew, the word Levana for moon equals 33. And yeah, but I mean, it's definitely something to it.
My
And
mom's
then
birthday is 11/30.
whose is?
My mother's
Oh, November
11/30.
30th. That's the ultimate eclipse date, man. That's
56, which reduces to 11. 11 through
yeah.
11.
So what's interesting about that date, November 30th, is that is the date that the eclipse code is centered around. So if you write out November 30th in Gematria, it sums to 1331. It's the only date that does. And there was one total solar eclipse in the year 1331 on the date November 30th. And in that same cipher, 1331 eclipse equals 1331. And that's the only eclipse I've ever seen, the only total solar eclipse I've ever seen that the path of totality never touches a major body of water. It's all on land, 100% of it. And my mom's name, if you take her two married names and add them to her birth name, her name sums to 1331 in the same cipher. So the fact that your mom was born on 11/30, I mean, that kind of trips me out.
Yeah.
That's wild. Even my dad's name in reverse gematria, his name sums to 310 and 130, like 13 and 31. It's wild, man.
It all comes down to just realizing that we are all that come from the same thing.
Right. And that to me is how this is all possible, is that we are connected at the original source.
Mm-hmm.
When you separate matter, like there's still something that's connecting it. And part of what I want to talk about in that workshop too is a little bit about these, I think a lot of us, if not all of us, are probably familiar with things like the double slit experiment, for instance, and how observations literally change the functions of reality, and how they've taken these studies further and taken DNA out of somebody. And they've measured that DNA, even if it's hundreds of miles away from the original person, that DNA is still electrically responsive to emotion that that person is experiencing. And it's all instantaneous. There's no speed of light. All I know is that, these types of studies that they've done essentially tells us that there's this underlying fabric of reality, this connection. And none of that is possible without, the fact that we're all somehow connected at some source. Like, no matter how far you shoot one electron out from another, they're still going to be connected. So that's how I see it. And that's part of what's led to my spiritual peace over the last few years, is that I understand now that people are like, I can see someone, and instead of being upset at how they are, I understand that that's a different reflection of my potential consciousness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's totally revamped my view on humanity and what other people are. And I used to keep very distant from people because, I'm kind of a nerd, an intellectual. And I just was never like that interested in people because I didn't think they were very smart. But through this study, I've come to understand that differently now. And it's not, how smart the person is not important. Their experiences matter. Their emotions matter. What they can contribute, what their perspectives can contribute to my life is what matters. It doesn't matter how smart someone is. They can't necessarily control that. So, I do think people shouldn't be so ignorant, but it's kind of a different story. So,
yeah, ignorance is really bad right now because people are just like feeding the algorithms their statistics, their life.
Never been so easy to be ignorant.
Oh.
You have infinite distractions, and I'm guilty too of falling into distractions sometimes and blowing off my work and stuff, because it's like, I mean, when you look at numerology, it's pretty exhausting. And, I don't put out as much work as, someone like Zach, for instance, because it's exhausting to me. And also too, unless I feel like I'm furthering something, I don't necessarily want to, spend time on it. So I still try to enjoy myself doing other things. But yeah, I mean, if someone wants to be ignorant, they have plenty of other things to distract them from the knowledge. And that's the system. I mean, that's by design, I believe.
Oh yeah, it's all by design. And I think that whoever was aware of gematria and history and the way that things actually work, they either decided to repress this knowledge at one point, or there was a bad egg and it just created civil war, and then the utopian was destroyed.
Yeah, as far as why they hid the knowledge, I guess that's a part of debate too. Like when originally this knowledge was, according to legend, they got the information from from the Holy Land in Jerusalem, took it west, the Knights Templar, and they brought it to Europe. And when they brought it to Europe, that knowledge was despised. They didn't want to hear it because, and I've seen this with some people, like people learn about numerology and how everything's coded, and they see the same number on the clock every time. And to someone like me, I mean, to me, it's a little enriching and it's empowering because it tells me that we're connected to this reality, at a different level than we typically understand. But some people feel like, oh no, I'm just a computer program or something. Like if everything's coded by the numbers, then my experience must be worthless because it's all planned out ahead. And I definitely don't see it that way, but I think a lot of people find this knowledge and they let it affect them negatively. And I see that danger in gematria, honestly, because, if you watch Zach's videos or, especially older or one of my older videos, it's kind of depressing. Like you just get this sense that it's just evil and control and it's already too late. And I'm trying to twist that and turn it into a positive by explaining the organic side, because if you're not also bringing that knowledge along with the dark stuff, so to speak, then what are you really contributing to someone's life other than bringing them down into your own nasty existence, So that to me is one of the most important things, is not just understanding, and that is a big part of it, is understanding the numbers themselves, but just understanding how to improve people's lives and, instead of just telling them it's all gloom and doom.
And understanding that you are the source and you are the creator of your creatrix and we are in the matrix, that brings into question for me, like, if you really do heal and love yourself, do you really change the world? Is this just one huge game? Not a game, like maybe a game for yourself, that source plays on yourself. And until you achieve true humility and true love of yourself, you're just at like a constant battle, trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I feel like this reality, I kind of touched on it before, like, I don't know if this reality can exist without some sort of evil, because without that, then it's difficult to grow in love. And to me, that's a big part of why we're here, is to not just, love ourselves, of course, but to also better love those around us and, better their lives as well as our own. And then how well we do at that is probably judged to some extent. And then, based on the afterlife, I mean, that could be any number of things. And maybe it's based on your belief. I believe it's probably, what's probably most likely to me is that when people talk about heaven and hell, they could just be talking about different states of being on earth. I mean, you can make very clean arguments that people are born into hell on earth. Mm-hmm. There's other people who are born into heaven.
Right.
So I don't necessarily have a belief about what happens, but I think that's pretty likely, is that if you mess up real bad and you don't get it, you could just come back here. And to me, that's kind of scary. I mean,
so I don't really think there is any repercussions. I mean, I do believe in karma in like this sort of like existence. Like if I smack you across the face, my spirituality is that I just smacked myself across the face. So it's instant karma. Like if I steal from you, I was just stolen from, because deep down we're that same source. I mean, obviously we're different, you know what I mean? We have all of our character defects and so on.
Well, because if you steal something, it doesn't give you the same peace of mind as it does if you worked for it. And that could be the karma right there, is that you're just forced with this feeling of unfulfillment, of, this lack of happiness, because deep down you stole.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's your own moral code is what it is what karma is, because to thy own self be true, essentially. Because if you're holding thoughts and letting people rent space in your head and arguing about, because I have a lot of experience doing this shit, arguing with people in your head before you even have the conversation, all sorts of stuff, you know what I mean? Just being able to let go, let the universe do it.
Yeah, and that's part of, I think, the gematria study for me too, is like understanding what I can do. And like it still happens where there's an event that And if I haven't decoded it yet and done a video or something, like the Dayton shooting, like I was trying to enjoy a day at a festival, and there was this like in the back of my head, like, you got to get this work done. And there's a point where it's like I'm still working on that, like trying to separate myself from that Gematrinator personality and just be able to enjoy things, because whether or not I make a video on it that freaking day, I mean, maybe a few extra people will see it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make a big difference. And just like understanding my role and having peace with that, it's tricky because I always want to do more. It's, you know, you never feel satisfied. But at the same time, you have to also, you know, I get a lot of emails still to this day from people every week that just like, thank you for your work. And you brought so much extra insight and, you know, knowledge to my life. And those things I have to like learn how to enjoy that, because I read those and I like, my instinct is like, oh, cool, delete. But I had to teach myself to kind of sit back and be like, okay, like take that in as a reward. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
very cool, man.
I'm still working on that, but because, you know, I'm just trying to figure this reality out like anybody else. Like, I was just watching truther videos, just like everybody else watching this video a few years ago, and I had no idea what was going on, and I still struggle with what's going on, but at least I found something that's new, and, you know, we're advancing some sort of research. And to me, that's the best gift that I've been given, is insight and this ability to recognize a code. And I guess I have a better ability to see certain patterns than other people have. You know what I mean? Whatever it is that led me here, I'm thankful for it, because it's given me fulfillment. And, you know, it's not like everybody's going to find gematria and come to the same conclusion or realization that I did. And not everybody's the same. That's fine. But there is a segment of people that this will absolutely empower and enrich their lives. And to be a part of that and bringing that to people, it's like, it's great. And, you know, one thing of the Kabbalah that I kind of adhere to is the red string. I used to wear the red string on my wrist. Now I just wear like red bracelets. And, you know, a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, that's satanic or whatever. And it's like, no, if you understand, red is the darkest color on the spectrum. And this represents, you know, your left hand is the receiving hand in the Kabbalah, the tarot and whatnot. And it's about taking that darkness and turning it into light and manifesting it into improvements in other people's lives. And to me, that's what it's representative of. So it's something that's very special to me. And before gematria, I didn't have anything that was like that special to me that I felt like I wanted a tattoo or I wanted to, you know, wear something.
My whole arm is dedicated to my spiritual awakening, and my leg and my side.
And yeah, and I'm all for that. And like me at this point in my life, I don't see myself doing that, but I don't hold it against anybody who does. Like, however you want to express that journey is awesome. And it's just pretty badass that we can like go and get tattoos now. I mean, that's pretty fucking so, but yeah, I mean, hopefully it can just provide a little extra insight to people's lives. And not everyone's gonna be like a gematria rabbi, but, you know, at least they have a little extra knowledge about what the world is, and maybe they can use it to their advantage, or, you know, at least, you know, to advance their knowledge, which is enriching in its own right.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Derek. I can't wait to see you in September. I know we had a long chat. We got into a lot of crazy shit. Might have to edit some stuff out, but
that's fine. I mean, it's the thing with gematria is like, you could tell me to have a 1-hour workshop. You could tell me to have a 3-day workshop, and I will be talking the whole time. Like I could talk for days about it. So
yeah, me too. I went on this date and all I could do was talk about Bitcoin, and I just scared her away.
Oh man, we have to share
Bitcoin,
experiences
anarchy.
about mixing these studies in with relationships. It's tough, man. I don't think you can do it. Yeah. I don't think it's possible.
For sure. All right, man. Well, it was great talking to you, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Pat. We'll talk to you soon, man. We'll see you.
Anarchadelphia is a conference dedicated to the principles of liberty, individual sovereignty, and freedom from coercion, located in Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty. Anarchadelphia aims to shine light on issues such as geopolitics, blockchain economics, spiritual health and wellness, as well as exposing the Earth's sacred hidden knowledge. Featuring Mark Passio, Max Egan, Derek Burrows, Zachary Hubbard, Jeff Berwick, Clive DeCarl, Sterling Lujan, Etienne de la Boisse Squared, Lynn Ulbrich and the Free Ross Initiative, Kerry Wedler, Luke Rudowski, Dan Dix, Josh Sigurdsson, Jason Goodman, Benny Wills, Sasha Daygame, Gina Carr, Chuck Williams, Aaron Nakamoto, Ken Bozak, Leah Thompson, and many more. Join us this September's Harvest Moon for an array of lectures, group panels, workshops, and the premiere showing of Mark Passio's The Science of Natural Law. Make sure you grab a seat at our Friday the 13th full moon feast. Speaker dinner orders must be placed before September 11th. Anarchadelphia has interwoven 3 uniquely stylized afterparties that you're not going to want to miss. Friday night, the State of Anarchy goes internal with the family as the Freeknots bless the stage and Danny Quest premieres his new EP. Disclaimer: nightlife subject to several inspired anarchists spitting the truth and sharing the mic. Check, 1, 2. Saturday night, Clockwork Records produces its 77th late night event, showcasing Philadelphia native Messinian, plus Lab Rat, Cosmo, and Gobsmack. Sunday afternoon, Anarchadelphia is sponsoring Sober vs. Wasted, a professional skateboarding contest that rolls through Philly's famous FDR skate park every autumn. After we award the first place shredder, we'll transform the entire park into our blowout punk rock show featuring the Ill-Fated Natives and Carmen Karanji and friends. The State of Anarchy is an interstate that once reached in enough individuals will bring about a new earth. For more information about the event, live stream, and tickets, visit anarchadelphia.com.